You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now. Welcome to 535. I'm Mariana Sotomayor, congressional correspondent at Puck News. We have a lot of interviews this week, and we may have a celebrity sighting on today's show. Fact check, we do. Rainn Wilson, famous from The Office, is going to be here today. But first, I have a celebrity within the House Democratic Caucus, Congressman Brad Schneider, Democrat of Illinois. He's also the chairman of the New Democrat Coalition, a pretty pragmatic group who likes to get a lot done and focus on policy, which is what we're going to talk about today. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Did you say you're a celebrity?
I don't think so.
Okay,
but,
well, you know.
Rainn Wilson is a celebrity.
Yeah. You're very well known up here, though, and you've got a lot on your plate this year. And last year too.
It's a busy time in Congress.
Yes, and there's possibly a lot on the horizon for Democrats if you all take back the majority, and I know that's what the New Democratic Coalition, the New Dems, have been working on. Past year, it's been a lot of working groups, conversations, what are the policies we focus on, and now you have the New Dems American Promise agenda. So for those who don't know, what you all are promising, very briefly, lower costs, less chaos, real solutions. And under that banner, I mean, dozens of different policy areas that you would love Democrats to target, especially if you all are in the majority. Under that, it's give Americans a fair shot to get ahead, tackle the most difficult challenges, and restoring faith in government, fighting corruption. I mean, it's 65 pages, delved into all of that.
65 pages, one-page summary.
There you go.
Look, the devil's in the details, and there's no one single policy that's going to address what Americans are looking to their government for, but there is a principle, and I think the basic principle is government working to make life better for the American people. And what we've seen with this Republican administration is the exact opposite. Costs are rising. It's just getting harder for families to make Republican
Might have a Republican Senate and Trump
who
might veto it.
Is set a course that will move us forward. We know that President Trump is going to likely veto anything that might pass the House and the Senate if it doesn't specifically benefit him. We also know he's transactional, so we'll look for those opportunities to have some wins. If I switch to baseball analogy,
sure.
Singles and doubles, not necessarily home runs, but focused on showing the American people that the Democrats have a vision to move the nation forward, earn the right to have the chance to govern, electing a Democratic president in 2028, and governing in a way that delivers on the promises that we're making today in 2026.
Looking ahead, the New Dems are already the largest ideological faction within the House Democratic Caucus. I think there were lessons learned after 2024. There was voter pushback to the more far left perspective, let's say, that exists within the Democratic Party. To be able to win the majority, there's a lot of Democratic candidates in swing districts trying to flip Republican districts. I'm sure you are also talking to those candidates, trying to get a sense of, would you support these policies? I'm sure you've handed over the agenda so far.
Absolutely, and we're talking to candidates in district that we're trying to flip from Republican to Democrat. We've endorsed 29 candidates so far this election cycle. 21 of the 25 red to blue, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committees targeted are members of are endorsed by the New Democrats, will be members when they're elected. So we'll continue to grow. The common thread through all of these are people who know the districts they're seeking to represent, understand the issues that people care about, and are committed to coming to Washington to get things done on their behalf. New Dems have a lot of mottos, we say. We're the majority makers, and we have been. In 2018, 33 of the 40 seats flipped that gave the Democrats majority were New Dems. We continue to grow, as you mentioned. We're at 114, the largest caucus. When we win the majority, we'll grow even more. So we are the majority makers. We also get things done. We're the ones who solve problems by working across the entire caucus and reaching across the aisle. And we're the ones who look to the future and have a vision, not just to the next election, but what's going to deliver for our kids and our generations to come.
Well, Congressman, I only have a couple seconds with you. I want to do our 5:35 1 minutes.
Okay.
Just quick, rapid fire question and answer. What is the most difficult part of the job?
I will tell you the hardest part right now is the inability of the Republicans to get anything done. Last week we had 2 voting days canceled. That was the 11th and 12th voting day this year already. We started talking before. We don't know what we're going to be able to bring to the floor and vote today. So the inability, I trained as an engineer in college, I worked in business. You set a plan, you work your plan, and you check off things as you get them done. The Republicans don't seem to have a to-do list.
To that point, though, do you have a favorite Republican across the aisle?
I have a lot of good friends across the aisle. We work together on the Ways and Means Committee. I think we all have extraordinary relationships. One of the things I'm most proud of as members leave, you oftentimes forget them. I don't want to lose those friendships, Democrat and Republican, and I've stayed close with friends on both sides as they've left Congress.
And what's your plan for August recess or for the New Dems?
For the New Dems, we'll be going around the country, talking to people in districts, especially those swing districts, listening to what's on their minds and helping them understand that the New Dems are prepared to deliver to make their life better.
Congressman, thank you so much.
Thank
this
you.
is your debut on 5:35. We hope you come back.
Would love to.
If you come back, we're going to be talking about affordability. We've talked about it already. It is the word of the day. Stay tuned.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the people's house, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions or comments or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
This intolerable dependence on foreign oil is a clear and present danger to our nation.
We will not return to the days of gas lines.
I have repeatedly called for more energy independence for America.
I urge Congress to pass legislation that makes America more secure and less dependent on foreign energy.
After years of talking about it, we're finally poised to control our own energy future.
It's time to deliver true long-term energy independence in America.
We will have energy independence and energy dominance.
Lights on energy. Energy dominance starts now.
America's housing market is frozen. Outdated tax policy is keeping millions of homeowners stuck. The capital gains exclusion on a primary residence hasn't been updated since 1997, when the median home price was about $129,000. Now, it's more than $419,000. Over 13 million homeowners would exceed the cap if they sold today. The result? Fewer homes on the market, higher prices, less opportunities for first-time buyers, families, and seniors. The More Homes on the Market Act would modernize the capital gains exclusion by doubling it and indexing it to future inflation. More homeowners could move without facing massive tax penalties on their home equity, which means more homes, more mobility, and more opportunity. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Susan Davis, and everything is expensive right now. Gas, groceries, housing, childcare, and affordability is one of the top words you hear on Capitol Hill. One of the congresswomen thinking about that very issue is Sarah McBride from Delaware. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now, one of the issues in particular that you've been looking at in your career is the issue of both childcare and paid leave. And we're going to talk about what Democrats want to do here right now, but you had some notable success on this issue when you were a state lawmaker in Delaware. Can you talk about what changed in Delaware?
Sure. Well, I first decided to run for public office, first decided to run for state senate because of my experience as a caregiver to my late husband Andy during his battle with cancer. Throughout that experience, we knew how lucky we were to have health insurance. We knew how lucky we were to have flexibility with our job that allowed him to focus on the full-time job of getting care and me to focus on the full-time job of being his caregiver. And while that cancer ultimately took his life, up until his last breath, he knew how lucky he was. And I decided to run for office because I do not believe that in a state of neighbors, which is what we call Delaware, or in the wealthiest, most developed nation on earth, that time and ability to get care should be a matter of luck. I believe it should be the law of the land. And so I said when I ran that my number one priority would be passing paid family and medical leave in Delaware. A number of other states have passed it at the state level. Nearly every other nation has some form of paid leave. And so I introduced legislation in 2021, traveled the state, met with people who agreed with me, who disagreed with me, built a coalition that ranged from the AFL-CIO to the State Chamber of Commerce, and we were able to pass a 12-week paid family and medical leave bill providing paid leave for workers who are welcoming a child into their family, struggling through a serious illness, taking care of a loved one struggling through a serious illness, or adapting to or preparing for the deployment of a loved one overseas in the military. We were able to pass that bill with broad bipartisan support in Delaware.
How'd you pay for it?
It's paid for by a payroll contribution.
Okay.
Less than the cost of a cup of coffee a week, with it split between workers and employers. And this was something that we knew that Delawareans believed in and wanted. 85% of Delawareans supported paid family and medical leave, and that number remains solid even when they found out that there was a payroll contribution, which is how essentially every other state that has passed this has paid for it. And at the end of the day, that contribution, at some point in a worker's life, they will need to take this kind of leave. And when that leave occurs, many workers are forced to give up their income. And what they give up in their income when they take that inevitable leave is far greater than the predictable fraction of a percentage payroll contribution that they make weekly. And similarly for businesses, in the longest state to have had a paid leave program at the state level, 90% of businesses said that their state's paid leave program, even with the contribution, had a positive impact or neutral impact on their bottom line. And actually small businesses were even more likely than large businesses to say that the program had a positive, not just neutral impact on their bottom line. And so I believe this is a policy that's a win-win-win. It's a win for workers, it's a win for businesses, and it's a win for our economy overall. And it operates and is funded similar to Medicare and Social Security.
For a long time, this was an issue on Capitol Hill that I think was more of a left-right issue. But I do think in some ways the conversation has shifted on this. And we've had lawmakers on this show, Republican women and Democratic women, saying there is more of a coalition here to look at this more broadly and see if there is a national solution. Do you find that there is more engagement across the aisle here? Could it be as bipartisan as it was in a state like Delaware?
You know, I think there is definitely bipartisan recognition that this is a problem, that we have a 1950s care infrastructure for a 2026 workforce, and that something needs to change.
Yeah.
And I think that's a byproduct of more caregivers, more women, more parents from working class backgrounds present here in the halls of Congress on both sides of the aisle. Unfortunately, I do think that there remains disagreement about how best to achieve this. I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle often want to push forward policies that unfortunately have proven not to be successful in expanding access to paid leave, trying to incentivize businesses to do this on their own. But the reality is that the most affordable and widely available way to make this available to the American people is through a default public option that workers and employers help to form, and that is guaranteed for workers no matter where they work. Because right now, one of the challenges that I hear from smaller businesses is that this is an increasingly in-demand benefit for families.
For hiring.
And they are at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to this benefit with larger employers who are adopting this on their own, who can afford to adopt this policy on their own, because when it's an individual business, even a big one, it is more expensive to provide this benefit than when you pool resources across the workforce. Right. And so these smaller businesses have a real challenge in competing, and unfortunately the policies we've seen from the other side of the aisle, perhaps well-intended, just don't have the same effect in expanding access and allowing this program to be genuinely affordable and available for workers and businesses across size.
I also think it's interesting because for a lot of, when we talk about paid leave, I think often we think about childcare, having children, but we're also in this period of time where we talk about the squeeze generation. With such a significant aging population, increasingly people will have to take paid leave to take care of their parents. I mean, I think that is a very common issue in American life today.
That is a huge issue, and as we see more members of Congress from younger generations that fall in that sandwich generation, right, where they're caring for a young child but also caring for an aging parent at the same time, it only reinforces how urgent paid leave is and also how universal the need is. I think a lot of times when people hear paid leave, they just think about the parental leave component of it. But this is also about a person who's diagnosed with cancer, or a worker who's caring for an aging parent, or like I did for a partner or a spouse. And you know, when we talk about access to healthcare, the crisis of affordability in healthcare is not limited to the cost of prescription drugs or the cost of a premium or copayment or a deductible. It also includes the financial sacrifice that people have to make when they're forced to take time off work to get radiation or chemotherapy or have surgery. And that financial toll, the average American doesn't have more than $400 in saving. That financial toll is significant at a moment of crisis in a person or in a family's life, when they're already feeling the stressor and terror of a serious illness. To throw into question their ability to pay the rent or put food on the table, that is, I think, a cruelty and an indignity on top of the cruelty of that illness in the first place.
Well, let's talk some of the specifics, because I know you are either a lead sponsor or co-sponsor of several pieces of legislation. Let me see where we should start. Maybe we'll start with the Family Act. Can you explain, and that to me seems like a broader coalition of Democrats supporting this. What would the Family Act do? Yeah, so the Family Act is the cornerstone of the paid leave movement at the national level. This is legislation that would guarantee paid family and medical leave for those welcoming a child into their family struggling through a serious illness, or taking care of a loved one struggling through a serious illness, for all workers nationwide. This is what we need to pass at the end of the day to fully modernize that support system, that care infrastructure in this country. It's sponsored by Rosa DeLauro, who's done an amazing job shepherding this through. A version of it almost got passed in what was Build Back Better during the Biden administration, but unfortunately it fell out. And I believe legislation like the Family Act really does have to be at the top of our agenda in a majority, and I believe at the top of the agenda for hopefully a Democratic trifecta come 2029, because at the end of the day, we can make improvements to the pre-existing FMLA law, which guarantees 12 weeks of job-protected unpaid leave for many workers in this country, although not all. But at the end of the day, we need not only job-protected leave for all workers, but paid leave for all workers, and that's what the Family Act would do. I'm curious about what this conversation is like right now in the Democratic caucus, because obviously there is a lot of conversations going on about policy agenda. If you take the majority, what does the party want to advance and fight for? And I'm curious, when you're in this room, where the consensus is on things like this. I mean, is it top 3? Is it top 10? I mean, where is there any disagreement on how quickly Democrats should focus on something like this? Well, I think I would say that I think there's broad support for it being in that top 10 agenda.
The reality of the cost crisis that we're facing right now is that there's no silver bullet. There's no one single policy that will address the rising costs that my constituents are facing. And when I'm back in Delaware, what I'm hearing from folks is that it's the cost of energy bills, it's the cost of groceries, it's the cost of gas, it's the cost of starting a family from the time you have to take off to the cost of childcare, it's the cost of housing. And we're going to need to have a multifaceted agenda, a multi-pronged agenda as a majority to really address the full scope of the cost crisis that people are facing in this country. And so I do think paid leave should be at the heart of that agenda within those first 10 bills, but there's a larger conversation going on within our caucus about that. I will say that the Family Act has almost the entirety of the Democratic caucus on it as co-sponsors. This is a policy, much like childcare, that many of my colleagues have already voted in support of in previous
measure,
Congress in some form or fashion. And I think when it comes to paid leave and childcare for all, I think while there's obviously nuances in the details, I think both of those policies not only meet the needs of my constituents and I believe Americans across this country, but I think they're the kinds of big, bold, transformational economic policies that Americans of all different ideological backgrounds are demanding. And I think those are big, bold policies that the entirety of our caucus, across the ideological spectrum of our caucus, can unite behind, as they have in the past.
It's also interesting to me, too, because in a world where Democrats may win the House and have split government, the Trump administration, which I'm sure you don't agree with on many of these measures, but in the first term of the Trump administration, they did expand FMLA to federal workers.
Yes.
I mean, it does seem like you may actually potentially maybe have a partner in the White House on this issue.
Look, I've always said I'm willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with me to help Delawareans. I wonder if this Trump administration would be as open as the first Trump administration, with Ivanka no longer in the West Wing, to engage with us in good faith and in a meaningful way. But I would certainly welcome the opportunity to work with anyone to pass paid leave, because this is an urgent issue. I mean, it is an urgent need for people. And while my general sense is we'll probably need a Democratic trifecta to adopt meaningful paid leave legislation, I'll certainly work with Republicans. If they're willing to work with me on paid leave, I'll work with them. If they're willing to work with me on other more discrete improvements to the existing laws that we have, I'm already working with them to make sure we're modernizing FMLA to better reflect the diversity of families and experiences today.
Congresswoman, I had so many more questions to ask you, but we got so in on paid leave and childcare that I think we ran out of time. So the answer to that is you have to come back on 535 soon.
Would love that.
And talk about more things that you care about and that are important to the caucus. Sarah McBride from Delaware, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
We need to take a very quick break, but we'll be right back with more 535.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
I work hard. My dad worked hard. That's where I got it from. What I take home is my future and my kids' future. And if I can invest in companies, they're going to reflect my principles, what I believe in. So why would those companies hire outside people to tell them to embrace principles I don't believe in? Congress must protect the financial future of Americans from the foreign-owned duopoly that answers to no one.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
In Afghanistan, the IED actually penetrated the vehicle between my legs, but it was a miracle that we all survived in the vehicle.
When I began the process to separate from the military, it was during COVID. And with the issues back home, we just knew we got to come back home and take care of the family. So we had to go stay at our mom's house. And there was already 3 people living there and 5 of us, or 8 people. How many bedroom? Like a 2-bedroom. Like a 2-bedroom house. We were desperate.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we gonna do now?
When I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm, and I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. They've really been a blessing.
I'm in the Permanent Homes for Veterans program. They built a house for me, and it's amazing.
We got the call, this is your house, and the kids and I took off just to go sit in the driveway and cry. It's life-changing. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account.
The best way to describe Operation Homefront is that it's like a family because they're always there for you.
I would say you guys are angels behind closed doors.
Operation Homefront has impacted my family in a way that's probably going to be passed down through my family's history. It's definitely going to be a story that's going to be told for generations.
Welcome back to 535 News. I'm Paul Kane, congressional reporter for Notice, and we're joined here today for a really, really fun and important discussion. First with Chad Pergram of Fox News, usually covering the beat here just like me, but also tomorrow night he will be in the booth for FS1, Fox Sports 1, as the color analyst of the Congressional Baseball game, where on the field the Republican skipper, Roger Williams, congressman from Texas, just outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area, will be defending 5 straight victories. So, tell us about this game and how important it is to the culture around here. What does it mean to, a lot of people will probably think, oh gosh, how silly, a baseball game.
Well, it's important around here. You know, you got to go back to 1913. Or 1909 when the game actually started. It's been played that long, but it's good for the culture around here because we need bipartisan things to happen up here. This is one time that we do it. And you know, baseball itself as a sport has been at the right place at the right time in American history, all the way from the Civil War forward to when President Bush threw his pitch out, and we all remember the World Series back at 9/11. So it's important, and you know, it's amazing too. I think that of all the years that the game's been played, I think Republicans have won 5 more times. Yes, so the game's pretty even.
47, 42, and 1.
Yeah,
there you go.
And 1. There was a tie.
But we're going to change that again tomorrow, and we got the same team we had last year. We were pretty good last year.
Okay, and now the event does, you know, last year I think they sold 31,000 tickets for Nats Park. The game's grown in its popularity. More and more people are going to the game. FS1 broadcasts it now, in addition to C-SPAN. But we're raising money for a local charity, right? And it was a couple million, or
44 charities.
44.
And they raised $2.8 million last year. I'm told they've already hit $3 million for this season.
Wow. Okay.
It's a good number.
It is a good number.
44 is a good number with the Atlanta Braves.
44 is a real good number.
Pete Rose.
Yeah. How did you explain how you ended up as coach, and what have you done with the team that might have been a little different when they were in that losing streak?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody does it differently, but when I got asked to take the team over, I decided if I do it, I want to do it the right way. We're going to run it like spring training, like we did in West Palm Beach, Florida with the Atlanta Braves, and everybody's going to have a role. We're going to teach them the basics of the game and not overcoach them. And I had a lot of guys liked the sound of that, and they said, well, I played in high school, or I played here, played there, and we brought them all together, and you know, we've played really good the last 5 or 6 years, and I think we're giving the fans an entertainment, and I think a lot of people are coming tomorrow to see us win.
How many practices do you go through?
Well, we start around March 1st, and we practice every day we're here. We're on the field at 5:30 till 7:15, and it's pretty good, and everybody gets dressed and goes be a congressman.
Have you been over to any of the practices?
I have. In fact, I was invited to come to the practice the morning that Scalise was shot in 2017. They used to practice very close to my house in Alexandria, Virginia. And it was the day before the game, and that's the reason I didn't go. But I've been to practices as far back as the late 90s and early 2000s, and we had 2 crews that came out to both the Democratic and Republican practices this year.
And I think too about the importance of the game. I think the shooting had a lot to do with it. It put a lot of people on notice of the game and what can happen and the goodness that comes out of it. So I think it had a lot to do with the jump start we see right now.
It really did. There was a surge that year of just people knowing about the game, and they sold, I think, 5,000-10,000 more seats like the day after the shooting for that night. But then it was the way the teams all came together before and after around the pitcher's mound, Democrats and Republicans alike sort of kneeling down and praying, which really sort of brought the importance of that moment home. And from what
One of the most amazing moments I have seen in baseball history, and I've been to an awful lot of Major League games. I was there the night that Pete Rose broke Ty Cobb's record. I've been to World Series games. Was Steve Scalise came back and played the next year. And on the very first pitch, he was in the field. Raul Ruiz, who's a Democrat from California, hit a sharp ball right to his right. Scalise was in the field. This is a year later after being shot. He made a stab at it, got it, and threw him out at first base on the very first pitch. I've never seen, you can't write that stuff. That's Field of Dreams stuff right there. That's the natural.
There's no question, and he was in a position where he couldn't move. I mean, where
he
we
threw
put
from
him,
his back.
Yeah, wherever we put him, that's where he was going to be. And the ball that Chad's talking about came right to him. He fielded and threw from his knees. And it kind of said, well, he's back, we're back, baseball brought us together again, let's go.
Is Scalise, I assume he's going to play again?
Oh yeah, he's our leadoff hitter. He leads off, and I think the last 3 years he's led the game off with a single up the middle.
He's hurt again, though. He's got a foot injury, though, he said, right?
Yeah,
his foot was in a boot.
He's got another foot. He got 2 feet.
Do you have any new players this year that have come along either through special elections or somebody who wasn't around last year and couldn't have time? Is there anything new about the lineup?
We have the same team we had last year.
Okay.
I mean, we literally do. And so we're going to play with that. But of course, you brought it up, Chad's talked about it. Everybody's excited about Mark Teixeira coming next year. He won't play this year, but the former Yankee great will be in Congress. He'll be playing first base in the Congressional Baseball team. So a lot of people talk about that.
Can he hit congressional pitching, though? Do you know yet? You know, some of these guys coming up from the minors, you never know.
I know you got to give him a test. We'll see in spring training how he hits. You know.
There's a legendary story from the 80s when Jim Bunning, Hall of Fame pitcher for the Phillies and Tigers, got to Congress, and I think he blamed his Republican teammate for not being able to catch his stuff. And the word was actually that Bunning really had just kind of lost it as he got older, and just once that magic is gone as a pitcher, it can be gone. Let's talk about your background. You were at TCU, you were drafted out of high school to play, but instead you went to Texas Christian University, graduate from there, and you get drafted in the Braves organization. That first season, I looked up the stats. You batted .318. This was in rookie ball. .318, had a .399 slugging percentage, 40 RBIs in 69 games. But the next year you got hurt. How much, and that sort of sent your career sideways?
Well, it did, and but yeah, I got hurt sliding into first base, which I never did. I always went feet first, but I slid in head first at first base. And when I did, my arm hit the ground, it popped up, hurt like heck. Ground out, I went out center field, I couldn't throw the ball. So that began my demise, and then they wanted me to move me to second base. The problem with that was I didn't have anything on the double play coming from third to second to first. I knew that. They offered me a job managing. I took a job scouting and took a job coaching at TCU for the next 3 years and so forth. So an injury cost me, but it also helps me because I can always say I didn't make it to the big leagues because I got injured, you know. But I got to play with Hank Aaron, Rico Carty. The night that Hank broke Babe Ruth's record, I was there. So baseball has been a big part of my life, and I'm grateful for it.
Okay, Chad, you have this book with you. Tomorrow night, you're in the booth. You got like Crazy Man scribblings in there?
This is the master book.
Because this isn't like a normal game.
Not at all. And this is what, back to our friend Pete Rose. He said that the easiest place to hit was the major leagues. The lighting is better, the pitching is better, the umpiring is better. If I was going to go down and call a Nats game or a Reds game, I would say, well, they were just in San Diego and they're on a 4-game losing streak. The Reds they lost to the Cardinals, whatever I would say. There's not a lot of information on this, let alone the stories about the players. You don't know somebody's history, and you have to dig this stuff up and the history of the game. So my wife, who is my statistician, God bless her, she helps me put together this massive book that has all sorts of statistics and stories, individual lines on things, little scribblings that I've added over the years, tales about different things. And so during the game, I rely on this. A few years ago, I called a Washington Capitals game, and my friend John Walton, who's the voice of the Capitals, who called this game for 2 years with me as the play-by-play guy, I asked him how much time he prepares per broadcast, and he told me 7 hours. Now, 7 hours is taking notes, doing interviews, watching, there's a lot that goes, same here, I mean, not all of it's just sitting in front of the computer, but it's kind of the same thing. I ran into one of your players last night who had pitched last year, Pat Harrigan. I asked him if he was going to pitch, and he said, no, I think I tore my labrum, So that's some of that preparation. He said he'll probably play in the field, right? Probably hit, but he's not going to pitch. He pitched an inning in relief last year. So that's part of that preparation that goes on.
Well, and having him do the color also is another moment that elevates this game up. Fox Sports, Chad doing the color, it just all's coming together right now, and I think each year's going to get bigger and bigger.
Are there any Democrats that you're particularly worried about that have been good in the past? Their pitching went very south when Cedric Richmond left Congress to go to the Biden White House, and so their pitching hasn't been as good. But do they have any batters that you're particularly worried about?
No. I just think I worry about our team, and I think like if we throw strikes, we keep the ball, and we play defense, we're going to be fine.
I think you said this to roll call that you tell people that the game is exactly like the Red Sox versus the Yankees, except a lot slower.
It's in slow motion.
That's the funny thing sitting up in the broadcast booth. And there was a fly ball hit, center field, and it was over the head of Jimmy Panetta, who played center field last year for the Democrats. And he's a pretty good athlete, certainly for a guy his age. His dad, Leon Panetta, the former defense secretary and congressman, played in the game as well. And just watching Panetta go back on the ball, and this is not an indictment on Panetta, versus a major league center fielder on a field that big, it really these guys are just not as fast. It really shows you the difference between a casual athlete in his 50s versus a major league athlete, say, who's 25.
Well, and the age catches up with you in baseball. I mean, you can lose it pretty quick. Your arm goes first, your legs go, and what happens is you get older, you run on your heels rather than your toes. If you're an outfielder, like I was, and if you run on your heels, the ball will bounce like this, and that's when you see him drop it. But it's just being younger. It's a young man's game.
But do you worry, this happens in politics, if there's a wave and one party wins, they generally tend to get younger. Mm-hmm. So do you have any worries about the midterms? Obviously you want Republicans in the majority, but are you worried that you might lose some players and all of a sudden the Democrats could bounce back and be strong next year?
Well, that could happen, but I can't control that. What I can control is what we got, and we're going to coach the heck out of them and coach them up. We don't coach them down, and we'll just see what happens.
You're running for another term.
Yes.
That gets you 2 more years. Are you thinking that, just two more games after this and you'll retire?
I haven't thought about that. I do want to, and Teixeira is a friend of mine. I do want to coach him. I think that'd be great to coach him. And then, we all know this. We've talked about this, but the Japanese have a team like we have, and we're in
the Japanese diet, right? Their
exactly.
parliament.
And we're talking about a home-and-home series with the Japanese. Tokyo Dome and here. I mean, we know we can put 40,000 here. They say they can put 50,000 in Tokyo Dome. I think it'd be great.
I've seen a game in Tokyo Dome before. Yeah, the Yomiuri Giants against the Hiroshima Toyo Carp, whose logo looks just like the Reds logo as well.
So, we may end up playing more than one game.
That'd be amazing. All right, that's all the time we have for now. But when you guys go to Japan, Chad and I are on our way with you. We will be right back with a discussion on civic renewal and shared purpose with someone who comes from a different office than you are used to. We'll be right back.
You're watching 535. We'll be right back.
He is what your show is called, The Decider.
It's Washington's hottest new show, and it has the Beltway buzzing.
Americans, they know BS when they see BS.
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Brody Mullins.
Is this era ending and is a new era beginning?
And veteran strategist Lisa Camuso Miller.
Have you ever had to tell a client no?
Talk to the biggest and most influential players.
We wanted $1 million. He said done.
Rewriting the rules of influence.
Business is going to be on the ballot.
Congress needs to do their job.
They become lapdogs rather than watchdogs.
The people who never talk.
That's such a good question.
Talk to them.
It was kind of fun, actually.
It's Washington's only show by and for insiders.
Welcome to The Deciders.
Watch weekly right here on 535.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org. There are moments that shape an organization's future. A policy shift, a crisis or investigation, a market shock. When that moment hits, the clock starts. Markets move in minutes. Regulators, employees, and customers respond instantly. Narrative helps leaders respond with pace, engage stakeholders with precision, and position brands with perspective. So when challenges emerge, you can navigate complexity and lead with clarity before the narrative is defined for you.
I enlisted as a medic to be there to help my patients, and after an injury, I found myself as a patient. I experienced post-traumatic seizures. Depression is a big one that comes along with it, PTSD. So I pursued my PhD in neuroscience and regenerative medicine. The coalition has helped fund my academic pursuits. They genuinely care about helping the vet in whatever way that they can. Through supporting the coalition, you're supporting some of the veterans that have the biggest needs.
Visit saluteheroes.org to learn more.
You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Susan Davis, and next we're going to talk about something we don't talk about all that often on Capitol Hill: spirituality and the common good. My next two guests are bonded over this idea, despite leading very different lives. Rainn Wilson is an actor, an author, an activist, and host of the Soul Boom podcast, and has long advocated for a spiritual revolution. Chris Murphy is a Democratic senator from Connecticut and has a new book out, Crisis of the Common Good, The Fight for Meaning and Connection in a Broken America. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great to be here.
To get this out of the way, I think a lot of people might be watching this and asking, how did these two people know each other? So how did you get to know each other, and was it over the course of this kind of work?
Well, we got to know each other in the last 2 minutes.
Great.
Yep.
So
and we bonded.
We're minutes long friends.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, but
it's a brand new friendship.
Yeah, it's a new friendship. but a beautiful, a growing one. It can go nowhere but up from
Community
here.
has to start somewhere. This is an idea that you both agree on, but you come at it from very different perspectives, is that there is a bit of a spiritual crisis in this country. I think you might have different ideas, so I'll ask you both, how did we get here?
You want me to start?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, obviously, like, this whole place revolves around the main character, Donald Trump. But the case that I make in this book is that, you know, America has been sort of undergoing a spiritual crisis for decades.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that, you know, what brings happiness? Happiness comes from waking up every day feeling like you have meaning in your life, that you have a purpose, that you have a clear identity about who you are. The Declaration of Independence, and we're celebrating 250 years of it, says government is supposed to pay attention to happiness, right? It says that that's one of the guarantees that government is supposed to provide. And I just think a lot less people are happy today. And if you look at what makes you happy or gives you purpose or allows you to find meaning, it's not necessarily GDP or the unemployment rate or your kids' test scores. It's whether you have positive relationships in your life. It's whether you are engaged in shared projects in your community. So my book is all about government starting to think about happiness, think about giving people more access to shared purpose in their community. And if we really critique our work, we've made it harder for people to find connection. You know, we haven't regulated these devices in our pockets that cycle us into lives of withdrawal. We've made it harder for folks to find positive purpose. For instance, local identity, harder than ever before as the economy just becomes global and homogenized. I think we can think more in government about how to invest in the common good, give people more access to purpose and meaning, and that's a conversation that, as you noted, is, you know, kind of foreign here, but I think we're doing our best work when we're actually thinking about the policies we make and whether it actually is making people feel spiritually fulfilled every day when they wake up.
Rainn, where do you see the cause of this crisis of spirituality and connection in the country?
Well, America is at a crisis point, certainly. It's also at an inflection point. I think our founders had amazing ideals when they launched this democratic experiment. And you mentioned life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I love the way you connected happiness to spiritual fulfillment, because so often in our lives, spirituality is what gives us our lives meaning and focus. And let me be really clear about what I mean when I say spirituality. To a lot of people hear that word and they're immediately turned off.
Yeah.
A lot of people hear that word and they think organized religion. They may even think Christian evangelicalism. Or they may think kind of like New Age, airy-fairy yoga classes and crystals or something like that. When I speak of spirituality, what I'm speaking about is the common shared universal values that we all treasure, that are part of the human heart and part of the human experience. And that is compassion and love for one another, service to one another, as exemplified by Jesus Christ and so many other great spiritual teachers. But you don't have to have a faith to be thinking about spirituality. But again, going back to our founders, they founded us on e pluribus unum, out of many one, and yet we're very divided. We've been more divided. We were more divided 100 years ago. It was certainly more divided 150 years ago. And we're divided again, and we have to have hope that the systems can carry us forward to a certain degree, but the systems perhaps need to be recalibrated, reinvigorated. We, in this letter, A Common Endeavor, we talk about the spiritual renewal of America. Yes, we look back on the last 250 years and celebrate what we've done, but where can we go over the next 250 years? And this letter from the Baha'i National Community of America is talking about a spiritual renewal of democracy. We're trying to engage in that conversation, and that's a mutual conversation that we both undertake.
And just for clarity, you are a member of the Baha'i faith.
I am a member of the Baha'i faith, yes.
Can you explain quickly what that is? Because I don't think it's a denomination.
How much time do we have?
The Twitter version of it.
The Baha'i faith believes that all of the world's major religions come from one source, one God, and that they're all ever unfolding chapters of a book. So as a Baha'i, I'm also a Christian. As a Baha'i, I'm also a Muslim. As a Baha'i, I'm also a Buddhist, because all of those sacred texts are central to the Baha'i faith. And Baha'is are working to build unity and work in service, but through a kind of a radical spiritual revolution, spiritualizing systems and processes.
Can you talk about, I think one of the questions I have here is, even if you agree with what the case you're making, where is the responsibility on me, and by me I mean the individual, the average person, to find that community and connection? And where is the responsibility of either culture or government? How much of my happiness is your responsibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, again, I talked about the Declaration. Founders believed that our job was to create a society in which people can find happiness, right? So this isn't an irrelevant topic. This is maybe the most relevant topic. And how do you find happiness? You find happiness through identity, through purpose. Often that is a religious identity. Sometimes that is a religious purpose, but sometimes it's just finding common purpose with your neighbors. And government has just made a bunch of decisions to make it harder for people to be spiritually healthy. For example, it's harder than ever today to even join organized religion, because you have to work 70 hours in order to make the same standard of living that 40 hours would have given you a generation ago. Leisure time is really important in order to be spiritually healthy. So wages matter when you're talking about happiness and fulfillment. These devices in our pocket, we decided to not regulate them. No other technology in the history of America has been unregulated, even as it is so poisonous. If you want people to be spiritually healthy, you have to get them off their devices. And government has made a decision not to protect people from that poison. So yes, ultimately, happiness and spiritual fulfillment comes from your own individual journey. But government has set you up for failure because we are not allowing people to find that easy access to common purpose, meaning, and identity, as was, I think, the case a generation ago.
So what do you see the roadmap as? Like, if you're giving advice and you're this book and your talks, and people say, okay, I agree, where do we go from here?
Well, I think it ties into your previous question of what is your responsibility, what is my responsibility, what is the average citizen or voter's responsibility. And I think in every faith tradition, there is a spiritual charge to try and make the world a better place. Of course, we need to grow ourselves and our souls, and we need to take care of our families, and that's primary. But we also need to take the tools and qualities and talents that we were God-given and put them to use to make the world a better place. We need to engage in conversations much like the one that we're having. And you can have this conversation in a cul-de-sac or a church basement or a Rotary Club. You don't have to be on Capitol Hill in order to do it. And I think joining groups and helping create community at the grassroots is something that everyone can do. So what can we do? What do we need to do? Where does hope come from? It comes from, there's been an outrageous decline in people not participating in any kind of like civic discourse. And I'm talking about a pickleball league or a Rotary Club or Kiwanis or so this has frayed the social order. So we're just yelling at each other on our phones, and we're listening to news organizations that are yelling at us and pricking us into outrage. And so anything we can do to get together with our neighbors, a service project, a project of commonality at City Hall, with our churches, service projects, this is where I think Americans need to turn their focus so that we're not simply relying on our wonderful elected officials to direct the course of our communities.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it is a mutual project between government and individuals. And Rainn, you referenced the times in our past that we have been really divided, and that's true. It's important to remember.
Same as it ever was.
Right, 100 years ago was the Gilded Age, a time that felt a lot like this time. And citizens made their own decisions to try to build a more communitarian society. Those groups you're talking about, Rotary, Kiwanis, Civitan, Lions, they were all formed in a 5-year period of time from 1910 to 1915, when citizens, tired over the Gilded Age, tired of being pitted against each other, just decided they wanted to engage in service. But there is something psychologists call the scarcity mindset, that when you wake up every day and you don't have enough food to live, you just aren't feeling real generous or selfless, right? You view your neighbors as competitors for scarce resources. You don't view them as people you could potentially be in communion with on a project to help your neighborhood. So it is incumbent upon government to set the rules of the economy so that people aren't living every day in a scarcity mindset. Because if they are just going to be less likely to join together or join a church or join a service club. Again, it's the individual's choice, but government has to set the preconditions so that people feel like they are able to be generous.
Can you give just a couple concrete ideas of what you mean by that from a legislative perspective? How do you legislate this into being?
Well, some of it is just about wages, right? Making sure that if you're going to work 40 hours a week, that you're getting a living wage. And that's a big jump from where we are today, a living wage. Just having enough to pay all your bills, that's probably $25 an hour. I think people feel more powerful when they live in a community where the important economic people are local. So that means breaking up concentrated corporate power, making your hospital owned by somebody local, your supermarket owned by somebody local. That breeds a sense of community and power as well. So again, that last mile has to be traveled by the individual, but more local ownership, higher wages, those are the kind of things that make people feel healthier and more powerful, like they have more agency, which gives them the confidence to leap into their community and join a project for the common good.
How much partisanship do you see around this conversation? Do you feel like this is a conversation that happens more on the left and in more liberal circles, or do you think that there is a unifying conversation here about spirituality?
Can I address that?
Please.
I want to say that a Pew Charitable Trust came out with a poll about spirituality in America recently, and it's fascinating. And it talks about how 92% of Americans believe in God, and 85% have some kind of spiritual practice. So one of the kind of false divisions, one of the false dichotomies is that there is this secular godless left and that there is this right that's all in favor of some kind of Christian nationalism. And those extremes don't reflect the mass of America. So actually, spirituality isn't just like some kind of like feel-good kind of thing. It's something that unites us, and it has from the days of our founders. It also divided them, even though they were mostly white Protestant males. There was a great deal of division there on a lot of spiritual ideas. So I think in terms of partisanship, I would urge the two parties to know that the majority of Americans believe the system is broken and want nothing more than people coming together in unity, and spirituality, spiritual belief and practice is something that can unify us, and that this is where government needs to turn its lens. We're tired of the division. Ask your average American; they're really sick of it.
I think that's a good note to land on, but before we go, I want to give one more name recognition to your book. It is called Crisis of the Common Good, The Fight for Meaning and Connection in a Broken America. It is available now. And you are here working on, it's something called A Common Endeavor.
You can find it online. It's from the Baha'is of America, from the National Spiritual Assembly, the Baha'is of America. Check it out. It's a great read. And Senator, if you come on my podcast, Soul Boom, I will sell a lot more books than you being on this live stream.
Oh, you've made a big,
whatever this is.
We'll see about that.
Now,
come on down
I'm going to hold you to
Los Angeles, and I'd love to have you on the show. But I truly thank you for your work. Yeah. It's so important, and I can't wait to dig into your book.
Same thing.
Rainn Wilson, Chris Murphy, I'm Susan Davis. This is 535, and we'll be right back.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
National Association of Realtors Advocacy, working to expand access to housing and defend property rights so that more Americans can build generational wealth and prosperity through home ownership, a critical voice in nearly 1/5 of the U.S. economy, supporting 2 jobs for every single-family home sold, and generating more than $760 billion of property tax revenue for state and local governments each year. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
A simple blood test can detect Alzheimer's years before symptoms appear. Congress can connect Americans to early, accurate dementia diagnosis by supporting the Bipartisan Alzheimer's Screening and Prevention Act, allowing Medicare to cover blood-based Alzheimer's screening. Congress has acted to cover mammograms and other life-saving screenings. Now it can redefine Alzheimer's care, unlocking early detection and access to FDA-approved treatments when they work best. Congress, it's up to you. Paid for by the Alzheimer's Association.
This intolerable dependence on foreign oil is a clear and present danger to our nation.
We will not return to the days of gas lines.
I have repeatedly called for more energy independence for America.
I urge Congress to pass legislation that makes America more secure and less dependent on foreign energy.
After years of talking about it, we're finally poised to control our own energy future.
It's time to deliver true long-term energy independence in America.
We will have energy independence and energy dominance.
Lights on energy. Energy dominance starts now.
Congresswoman, we only have a couple minutes,
okay,
which is perfect for our 5:35 1 minute.
Should I be afraid?
Who's the smartest member of Congress?
So I'm really putting you on the spot here.
You know, don't tell anybody this.
I'm too much of a politician to answer that question.
This is crazy.
What's the best committee? I do like them all.
On you, baby.
That was good. That was good.
Back on 535 News, I'm Scott McFarland. Next up is Mike Thompson, Democrat from the Sacramento area of California, a leader in his caucus on issues of gun violence control. That's a term you use.
Gun violence prevention.
Gun violence prevention. Yeah. Tell us why you characterize it as such.
Well, that's what it's about. It's about stopping, preventing, helping to stop, help prevent gun violence. Someone who uses a gun to harm someone.
you think it may hurt the effort if it's characterized as gun control or firearms control? You like to use the term gun violence reduction. Explain the contrast.
Yeah, historically, that's always been the case. When you talk about gun control, some folks think you're talking about taking their guns away or preventing law-abiding citizens from owning firearms, and that's not the intent. The intent is to address gun violence, address people who use a firearm to harm themselves or to harm others.
Let's talk about the issue and the effort. It's 14 years ago now, after Sandy Hook, then Speaker Pelosi put you in charge of the Gun Violence Task Force, the Gun Violence Reduction Task Force. What's become of that, and what progress has been made over the last 14 years?
Seems like just yesterday.
Yeah.
You're correct, and we just had a meeting this morning of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, and we're briefed today by the outside experts on the ramifications of some of the regulatory changes that this administration is trying to make, proposing to make. We had a press conference today that I participated in with Lucy McBath, who is also a leader in the gun violence prevention space, on the issue of red flag laws, something that's been very, very successful in reducing gun violence, and we continue to do that. We meet regularly, we work on legislation together, we work with outside groups who not only work in the congressional space, but also in state legislators, lay chores, and we work to educate voters on how important this work is, how it can make their communities safer.
It seems to me you're preparing for the eventuality or the possibility of a Democratic House majority, and I suspect you'd want to get after this legislatively. Where would you start? What would be a good building block you think you could get some bipartisan support for?
Well, we have bipartisan support for a lot of the legislation that we're doing, a lot of the work that we're doing, and if you could wave that magic wand and I was in charge tomorrow, I'd look at passing legislation that would reduce gun violence, keep our communities safe, and not put every gun owner's hair on fire. There's some common sense, reasonable gun measures that we could pass that would have an impact, make our communities safer, save lives, that would not affect anybody who is not a threat to themselves or others from having access to firearms. I'd start with universal background checks to make sure that any time someone purchases a firearm, they have a universal background check to make certain that they're not a danger to themselves or a danger to someone else.
Are there Republican votes for a universal background check?
Absolutely. No, I've got a bill right now with Republican co-authors. We've passed that bill in past Congresses with Republican co-authors and Republican votes. And it's understandable why. I mean, right now, we've had more mass shootings this year than we've had days of the year this year. Every day, 30 people are killed by someone using a gun, and if you factor in accidental deaths and suicide, that number goes up to over 100 people every day. People across the political spectrum, across the geography of our great country, understand there's things that we can do. I had a guy the other day at a town hall meeting, I referred to him as the guy with Carhartt pants and a tractor hat. He was demanding to know when he could start feeling safe about sending his daughter to school. Because as you know, gun violence is the #1 cause of death for kids and for teenagers. And there's things that we can do. Also red flag laws, safe storage laws, enacting legislation that will require people to safely secure their firearms when they're not in use.
Let me pause you on red flag laws. You've talked about these before. Democrats have talked frequently about these as well. They were a component of the 2022 Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. But there are states that don't know how to utilize or execute the red flag laws. They don't put the money in announcing them, promoting them, or enforcing them. Have you seen certain states get this and certain states don't in terms of using red flag laws where you can have a court order firearms taken from somebody deemed dangerous?
That's why we put the provision in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and we actually provided funding for states to be able to draw on those funds to implement red flag laws. I've seen a lot of examples. You know, some states, if you come before a judge and you've been convicted of something, the judge is mandated. I think Iowa is the prime example, where the judge is mandated to say, Scott, you've just been found guilty of this crime. You are now prohibited from owning firearms. Do you have any firearms? How do we help you get them out of your house so they're not around? And there's a lot of things that states can do. A lot of states try and go after the fact. California has a provision that's called armed and prohibited. They know there are felons who still have firearms in their possession. So they actually go out to the homes of these prohibited individuals and try and work with them to put space between them and their firearms.
I want to shift from firearms to the IRS. You're on the Ways and Means Committee. You've had a lot of legislation involving the IRS. I want to talk first about your bill on the so-called anti-weaponization fund. It would be, if I'm reading it correctly, Congressman, a 100% tax on recipients of the fund. All recipients, and how would that be mechanized? How would that work?
Well, the way it would work, the legislation directs the IRS to come up with the how it would in fact be executed. But the idea is you don't become the President of the United States of America in order to figure out how you get money out of the Treasury. And that's part of the problem with this slush fund legislation. So if a president or a member of Congress were to get money from this slush fund, they would be taxed 100% on that. The January 6th insurrectionists, the people that stormed, broke into, and vandalized the heck out of the People's House, the capital of the United States of America, they've been pardoned. And now many of them are coming back trying to sue the federal government for the fact that they were penalized for their criminal activities. They would be eligible for slush fund money. I don't think somebody who is an insurrectionist who literally beat the crap out of police officers in the United States Capitol should get anything other than maybe more time in jail. And they would be taxed 100% on any funding that they get from this fund as well.
Sounds like you're not taking the word of the Attorney General, the acting Attorney General, that they're not moving forward with the fund.
Well, the acting Attorney General said they were not moving ahead with the fund, and then the President came out right after that and said they were. So I'm not certain. There's definitely some mixed messages coming out of the administration, so I think it'd be better to put this in place to ensure that people who are criminals aren't getting taxpayer money, and people who run for office don't get taxpayer money just because they're in a position where they can.
You have a bipartisan bill that has passed through with Congressman Kelly of Pennsylvania on IRS whistleblower protection. Can you explain what an IRS whistleblower is and does, and why they need protection?
Well, what that would be is someone who works for the IRS who calls to the attention of higher-ups that there's a problem. And
in the agency or with the taxpayer?
In the agency. And they are rewarded with a bonus, if you will. And we need to make sure that there's not retribution against these folks, because if there's retribution, number one, it will discourage them from doing what they should be doing, and that's bringing these problems to the attention of the agency.
Let me ask you finally on the criticisms your state is getting for the slowness of its vote count. What do you make of the slowness of the vote count and the allegations of some impropriety because of it?
Well, I think the allegations of impropriety are nonsense. The fact of the matter is, and I'll be the first to tell you, I'd like to see it go faster as well. But California first sends everybody a mail-in ballot. And so just by virtue of that, it's going to slow the process down. As I understand it, when those ballots come in, the first thing that has to happen is the signatures have to be verified. So that takes a little extra time. This last election, this last primary election, problems were exacerbated because so many voters held off till the very last minute because they were uncertain as to who they were going to vote for governor. So that took a little longer, and then all these ballots came in at the last minute, which made it more difficult to get those ballots counted in an expeditious manner. I just think it's important that we chill, let these guys do their job, and that every vote is counted so every vote can count.
Mike Thompson of the Sonoma, Sacramento area, Democrat from California who has been a leader for more than a decade on gun violence prevention. Mike Thompson, thank you very much.
Scott, always good to be with you.
Back at you, sir. This is 535 News. Much more to come in a moment.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
We are Lions International, one association of global volunteers, one foundation for humanitarian grants, shaping the future, one act of kindness at a time. We are on a mission to improve health and well-being, to strengthen communities, to serve a world in need. We are Lions International.
To learn more, visit lionsclubs.org.
In Afghanistan, the IED actually penetrated the vehicle between my legs, but it was a miracle that we all survived in the vehicle.
When I began the process to separate from the military, it was during COVID. And with the issues back home, we just knew we got to come back home and take care of the family. So we had to go stay at our mom's house. And there was already 3 people living there, and 5 of us, or 8 people. How many bedroom? Like a 2-bedroom. Like a 2-bedroom house. We were desperate.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we going to do now?
When I came home, I needed a new roof due to a storm, and I was about to lose homeowners insurance as well. I applied for Operation Homefront Critical Financial Assistance Program. They've really been a blessing.
I'm in the Permanent Homes for Veterans program. They built a house for me, and it's amazing.
We got the call, this is your house, and the kids and I took off just to go sit in the driveway and cry. It's life-changing. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account.
The best way to describe Operation Homefront is that it's like a family, because they're always there for you.
I would say you guys are angels behind closed doors.
Operation Homefront has impacted my family in a way that's probably going to be passed down through my family's history. It's definitely going to be a story that's going to be told for generations.
Congressman Molina, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Appreciate you having me.
Can you explain to people where your district is and what kind of district it is? What do they grow in your district? And is that a big job industry in your district? Talk to me about this bill you have. It's called the Farms Act. What exactly is the problem you're trying to solve with this? Is this something that the administration could address on their own, or does it need to require Congress to pass a law to really fix it? Is this bipartisan at all? Do you have Democratic support? So what's the brass tacks here? Who's your counterpart in the Senate, and what is the path forward you see for this legislation?
Oh my gosh. You know, let me think about that.
I'm Mariana Sotomayor, congressional correspondent at PUC. I am now joined by Congressman Gabe Vasquez, a Democrat who represents a border district in New Mexico that has informed, obviously, his life experiences, which have thus informed a number of policy positions, whether it comes to border, immigration, and really informing the Democratic Party and how to move forward on those issues. So, Congressman, thanks for making your 535 debut.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mariana.
So today you introduced a new piece of legislation.
Yeah.
It's called the Care Worker Visa Act,
Yes.
which would create a new legal visa pathway for qualified workers.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the lack of caregivers.
Yes.
And that kind of falls into this affordability conversation that Democrats have been having for the past year. Republicans are also having that as well. Tell me about this bill and why is it important right now?
Well, I'd say this is both a caregiver bill and an economic bill. I say this because in New Mexico, we have a growing elderly population as an example, and many folks who have to take care of their aging parents, sometimes grandparents, they're left without opportunities for workforce development, to obviously get an education, to get a job. So by creating this new visa category to fill many of these caregiving jobs that right now we're in deep shortage of, including in New Mexico, we can create opportunities for families to go to school, to be able to go to workforce training opportunities, to get a job, you know. And so many folks I hear from back home say, if I didn't have to care either for my child, an aging parent, or even somebody, a family member with disabilities, they could really be in a better position economically. But look, this is one of the common sense issues that I think, red or blue, it doesn't matter. We care for our kids and we care for our elders. And we know that immigrants are already doing this job overwhelmingly across the country.
Yeah, so the visa, this would again create a new category.
Mm-hmm.
It would be capped, I believe, to $100,000 a year.
Yes.
And clarify for me, would this apply to those who are in the country legally and then some who are continue to be undocumented as well? How does that, how would that go?
So this is for both, for
Okay.
applicants outside of the country and for applicants that are currently in the country.
Got it.
For those that are currently in the country, an employer could sponsor them. And in many cases, some of these folks are already doing these jobs, right? You look at Florida, where a majority of their caregiving industry is done by immigrants. Those folks, if they may not be right with the law, if they are working without legal status, they could apply for this special category of visa. Now, we also put restrictions in here to protect the American worker, and I think that's really important part of this conversation, which is why this bill is endorsed. It's union endorsed, right? And that's important because essentially what we have to do is look at places where there aren't Americans to take these jobs, where there is a shortage, and to pay prevailing wages to make sure that they're not out-competing American workers. And so this really addresses this from a very common sense way, capped at $100,000. And again, most importantly, look, we want our elders and especially our kids. I mean, we see it here in DC, right, Mariana? Yeah. Lawmakers, when they're here on the Hill and folks are pushing strollers down Capitol Hill, I can tell you about 90% of those nannies and the caregivers for those kids, they're not speaking English, right? And hopefully those babies and those young kids are learning some different languages. But I think the lawmakers see it here too, which is really important.
So you've done maybe, I don't want to say the easiest part. Cobbling legislation can be pretty in the weeds, difficult.
Yeah.
But you've introduced it. Now, what's the plan next? So you're going to socialize it among Republican and Democrats. And, you know, talking about immigration generally, both parties have become so polarized on the issue. You're so familiar with that.
Yes.
I find it kind of hard to see Republicans wanting to put a bill like this forward simply because I can already hear, especially those in the more far-right flank, saying, wait, creating a whole new visa system? No, that's too much. We don't want to, we don't necessarily want to incentivize people to, again, cross the border, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure you've already heard of, in your mind, what the pushback could be on something like this.
Well, I think the momentum comes from the people, right? And we're here to represent the people. This is the House of Representatives, and so the lawmakers, I'm sure, will hear about this issue from their constituents back home if they haven't already. And so it's important that we are reflecting the will of the American people. And I think what's happening right now with this draconian enforcement, agency that is going out and targeting immigrant communities, folks that look like me, to be very honest, terrorizing American citizens. I mean, we saw what happened in Minneapolis. Americans are looking for an alternative. And I think those bipartisan solutions really have to be rooted in what people want in this country. And clearly, they don't want what's happening with this administration, but they also don't have any confidence that Congress can get anything done because we run into these stalemates when it comes to a common sense issue like providing caregiving to communities and to families. And so Democrats have gotten it wrong, Republicans have gotten it wrong. Comprehensive immigration reform is one of the most elusive things to do in this body. Mm-hmm. But look, if we can go to the moon a couple of times, this body should be fully capable of making common sense reforms to our immigration system. And that's one of the reasons that I am here.
Yeah.
You know, I am one of the few members that crosses the border when I go back home to my district to see his family. I grew up on both sides of the border. I know immigration very intimately, both from the family and visa side, but also when it comes to things like border security. You know, I encourage my colleagues, my Democratic colleagues, to not just take that codel and, you know, get to look at the border wall from binoculars, but to actually understand the intricacies of what a secure border means, learn how our border operates, learn about international trade, about customs and border protection and their various duties, all those kinds of things. I think we have, as a body, a responsibility to the American people to have a plan for border security in addition to immigration reform.
Let's talk a little bit more about your new American immigration plan. It's obviously like the guiding light, I think, for you and on this issue.
Yes.
You've informed, for example, the new Democratic coalition. We talked to Congressman Schneider earlier today. Yeah. You helped kind of build their immigration plan there. You've also been part of the working group with, or under Congressman Pete Aguilar.
That's right.
To also help inform leadership, because this is an issue, as you mentioned, that Democrats have not been able to pass. Even when it's been a Democratic trifecta, they haven't been able to really tackle immigration. So as you've had these conversations across the caucus, you are proposing this plan, given your own life experiences, but where are the issues still where Democrats can't really agree on border security, on immigration, because it is such a massive issue to tackle?
Absolutely. Well, look, we're seeing it just this week. In the absence of a solid Democratic plan or agenda, we're voting on 2 years of funding for ICE without restrictions, after a government shutdown, after failed negotiations. Democrats didn't get anything out of that. And in response, right, we're going to vote against that bill, which is terrible. But at the same time, what is our proposal? And so the new American immigration plan spells it out pretty simply to the American people. And it starts with securing our borders and border security. As Democrats, we have to be comfortable talking about that and, again, proposing solutions for that to make the American people trust the Democratic Party again. And that's important, especially coming from a district like mine. Secondly, it's about the economy, right? We know that farm workers in my district, as an example, who voted for the president are saying, Gabe, my onions are going to rot out in the field if you don't get me the immigrant workers that I need this year, and they're not coming anymore because of what's happening with ICE, right? And so across various industries, healthcare, construction, caregiving, farm workers, it benefits the American economy to have a sensible immigration plan. And then American values and humanity. I visited every detention center in my district. I visited Camp East Montana and El Paso. Those places are not reflective of our American values. And honestly, we are torturing people and separating families inside those facilities. People don't want that either. And lastly, legal pathways, right? And it doesn't all have to be citizenship. You know, if you look at guest worker programs, some folks want to come here and work in an industry and perhaps return back to their home country. It's different for everybody and for every family. And so providing more legal pathways to have legal status, such as this caregiver visa, is a start to that conversation. And so I'm not sure we're going to get one big package, but let's talk about the things that make sense, and as Democrats propose those solutions and come together.
We've talked about this before, how, you know, Leader Jeffries has said that the agenda going into the midterms, and obviously if you all win the majority, is really going to focus on affordability, health care, and corruption. There's some elements to what you're talking about that falls under the affordability category, but I'm also still waiting to hear if leadership is going to put immigration as part of the Democratic priority, because you talk about gaining trust back with voters. Voters are upset with Republicans and Trump. A lot of polls showing that they are more willing to vote for Democrats to have control of Congress, but they still don't trust the party. So is this possibly a missed opportunity if there isn't a push by Democratic leaders to at least vote on a number of policies that fall into this area?
Absolutely. It's a huge missed opportunity, and we see as the president's rating and the Republican Party's rating on immigration and how they're handling this issue continues to tank, we have to have an answer. And communities like mine and districts like mine demand an answer, because when Democrats had a supermajority under the Obama administration and saw that, you know, that immigration got pushed to as a third rail issue, that hurt a lot of people who I think Democrats took for granted were going to vote Democrat no matter what. That's one of the reasons that Latinos don't trust Democrats on this issue. And so leadership needs to step it up. I've been knocking on their doors. I've been talking about this in terms of we all have to get together, from the Progressive Caucus to the Blue Dogs to the moderates, everybody in this big tent umbrella of the Democratic Party, has to unite under a vision for immigration reform, what that looks like. And it starts, I believe, with my plan, the New American Immigration Plan, which is a basic set of values that follows up on larger principles of how we actually get there so that we can actually prepare the American people for these proposals. And if we have to tackle one of these issues individually, I think we're perfectly capable of doing that as a body here in Congress, which is why I can't wait till we have the majority and actually work through the policy. But for now, we cannot stay quiet. We cannot go quietly into the next election without addressing immigration, because I can guarantee you a lot of Latinos will be disappointed, and immigrants across the country.
Yeah, I hear your excitement about what the majority could look like. I mean, even just looking at the candidates, Democratic candidates across the country, you could be potentially joined by more border Democrats. There's a couple along Texas, obviously Henry Cuellar and Vicente Gonzalez have been here for a long time. They have been telling the Democratic Party and warning them for probably a decade of a number of things that you're still talking about now. You've added to that as when you were elected. I'm also thinking about Juan Ciscomani. He's in a very tough race, and there could be a Democrat, again, representing a border in Arizona. That's a pretty significant coalition. Are you talking to those candidates and saying, hey guys, like, this is what I'm thinking about? Does it jive with what you're hearing on the ground? And if you're elected, you know, will you co-sponsor a number of these bills? Like, how are you starting to think about that coalition building that could form?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I spoke with Bobby Pulido just recently, a great candidate from Texas. Y le hablé en español cuando me habló. I was like, yeah, you know, it's pride to have more candidates that come from border districts that understand the dynamics of the border, really get it. And so between candidates like Bobby and Joanne Mendoza as well, who I've spoken with, they understand the nuances of what folks want in their communities, especially in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, where you saw those really big swings between Latinos that went for Trump and that had voted Democrat, you know, several elections passed. There is a nuance there that I think the larger DC political machine does not understand. And I think it's about fairness and about justice and about families like mine, to be honest. You know, some of my family members who have waited a decade or more going through the visa process weren't too happy with what happened with the asylum and humanitarian crisis that we saw because they felt like, hey, we've been waiting in line for a long time. And so those dynamics along the border play out differently for Latinos, an example, than they do in Florida for Cuban Americans or for Venezuelan Americans and others. But we really need those folks that are subject matter experts to help lead this conversation and help shape immigration policy. And I think we are the best candidates to do it. I think our voices deserve to be heard so that somebody, no offense, but from Nebraska or from Michigan or from somewhere far removed from where we're facing these issues is actually, you know, those are the folks that are dictating policy and talking about this. I think we got to bring it back home to the border and have good candidates create good policy.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. There's a lot to talk about, so please come back anytime you introduce something new.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Mariana.
Of course. We'll be right back to talk about what Congress is, or maybe not, going to be able to do this week. Stay tuned.
You're watching 535, and we'll be right back.
Here on Capitol Hill, the 535 are in charge, the members of Congress. But in a democracy, in the people's house, you need to be heard as well. So if you have questions or comments or ideas, submit them to us at 535.news, because here with us, the floor is yours.
America's housing market is frozen. Outdated tax policy is keeping millions of homeowners stuck. The capital gains exclusion on a primary residence hasn't been updated since 1997, when the median home price was about $129,000. Now, it's more than $419,000. Over 13 million homeowners would exceed the cap if they sold today. The result? Fewer homes on the market, higher prices, less opportunities for first-time buyers, families, and seniors. The More Homes on the Market Act would modernize the capital gains exclusion by doubling it and indexing it to future inflation. More homeowners could move without facing massive tax penalties on their home equity, which means more homes, more mobility, and more opportunity. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
America leads the world in medicine development.
It matters.
We get new medicines first, nearly 3 years faster.
5 million Americans go to work because we make medicines here at home.
And not relying on other countries keeps us safe.
But China is racing to overtake us.
Will we let them?
Or will we choose to stay ahead?
When America leads,
America cures.
Let's tell Washington to keep us in the lead.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Rome. I've played many roles on TV and film, but today I want to speak to you as myself about a cause that's very dear to my heart. The Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund provides free help to those who have cancer and those who wish to prevent it. They've also worked tirelessly on banning cancer-causing chemicals in our homes and neighborhoods. I want to thank them as a mom for protecting our families. Please donate today at the Cancer Prevention and Treatment Fund at stopcancerfund.com.
You're watching 535.
This is 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
You're watching 535.
We're live from the Capitol, and 535 starts right now.
Welcome back to 535. I'm Susan Davis, and I'm joined by my colleagues Mariana Sotomayor and Scott McFarland. Hello, friends.
Hello. Good afternoon.
We have a lot to talk about what might happen this week on the Hill, but Scott, I'm still focused on things that have already happened, specifically talking about the votes in California that have still not been counted, and it sounds like it's increasingly irking members here up on Capitol Hill.
Seems to be driving the day, at least among the Democratic caucus. They're talking about it. They talked about it at a morning news conference. They talked about it in closed-door meetings. And what they're sensing here, at least they're fearing, is that the debate about whether California should speed up their counting, the malignant conspiracy theories that are being espoused about the slow count, can infect things November 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th when they're counting votes in the midterms, and everything could hinge on California's vote total as to who controls the U.S. House. They see the trajectory of all this, and they're concerned misinformation does just that, it misinforms.
That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that. If you cast forward to the election day this year, we could not know control of the House for several days, too.
If you recall, way back, we were a lot younger in 2018, and we were all much younger and naive in 2018 than we are now. But it looked like Trump had narrowly escaped disaster in those midterms, and then California came home over a week or two through the course of the month, and you're like, ooh, this was a rout in that midterm election, but it was late to reveal itself because of California. You can see how that plays out this year too.
It's also so amazing because if you look at other states, I think about Florida, which counts votes like chef's kiss, like every election night. And we know that there's a better way to count votes. It's kind of amazing that a state like California hasn't been able to build up the kind of infrastructure they're going to need. And do you get a sense from Democrats, even if they wanted to, can they make it better before November?
They can't mechanize a change that quickly in state election law. You'd be changing the rules of the game during the process. But what Mike Thompson, the Democrat from Sacramento, told 535 News is that one of the reasons this is revealing itself right now is because of the uniquely competitive gubernatorial primary. There were a lot of last-minute voters by mail. They waited to the last second to see where things were, then put a stamp on it, then put it in the mail, lawful vote. So you had a later churn of votes, high turnout election. That's part of what's at play here, but it's going to be sluggish no matter what.
Yeah. On to this week, Mariana, what are you watching? What are the stories, especially through the House and Senate legislatively, that you think are most important?
Yeah, well, the House is still waiting to vote on a DHS funding bill. It would fund parts of the department, particularly ICE and CBP, for 3 years. That passed the Senate on Friday. It was a long vote. The House didn't stick around because of a problem that Republicans are continually facing, and they can't really predict, which is absences.
Oh, yeah.
So that is the name of the game today. I've been told it's scheduled still for today to pass that vote. However, there's a couple of Republicans who say they might not even vote for a procedural vote to get final passage on the floor. So that's going to be one thing to watch in the next hour or so. And then, do they have enough Republicans in town? Because Democrats, they're whipping their people to make sure everybody is here to potentially block
And this is a take it or leave it for the House Republicans, right? Like there's not much room to,
no margin for error. And that is potentially going to affect conversations around FISA too. There's a lot that has to happen before we see a FISA bill on the House floor, but something notable is that the Speaker, Mike Johnson, went to the White House, and this is the second week in a row that he has done that. This time, I'm told that he was going to talk to the President about his pick to fill the DNI slot, Bill Pulte. That caused a lot of uproar among Senate Republicans last week and also House Republicans for the simple fact that he is a housing expert. He has no national security experience. So much so that, members who sit on those intelligence committees are saying, what? We need someone who understands this super complicated world to be a DNI director. So is Johnson going there, and could he potentially successfully tell Trump and make him reverse course on Pulte? That's what a lot of people are watching. We remember last week Johnson went to the White House and did get Trump to stand down on the anti-weaponization fund, which essentially unlocked for the Senate to be able to pass this DHS funding bill. So could they potentially get up to speed on FISA? Senate has to pass it first, then it'll pass the House. This particular provision expires on Friday, which is just crazy problematic if it does.
Well, it also does seem that senators in particular are looking at the leverage on the Pulte nomination around this FISA law. That it doesn't seem like Pulte has a very strong chance of getting a final vote on the Senate floor.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And someone else that Trump officially nominated, Todd Blanche, she was the acting Department of Justice Attorney General. But now he is officially the nominee, and Republicans aren't loving his nomination either. I mean, I'm just starting to think about the new senators who are part of the YOLO caucus. You only lose once, so what's there to lose anymore? They're already speaking out and saying, well, is he going to be Trump's personal lawyer, or is he going to be the country's lawyer? Because we're going to need some clarity on that.
Scott, we were also talking about FISA in particular. I mean, this law has been in existence for decades, and it seems like it can never be reauthorized without a last-minute, 11th hour fight to get it done.
Mike Johnson says it's a calamity if FISA goes unsupported, without extension, if there's any gap between those intelligence tools being available and them going dark and then going up again. So even a small term breach is viewed as a calamity. So that's a problem if we're getting up against a deadline constantly on something that has calamitous associated with it. The Bill Pulte factor is not negligible. It's really the heart and soul of the issue. They have lost all their Democratic votes.
Yeah.
At least a lion's share of the Democratic votes. And there's not a calculus that gets that thing through without a good number, a good chunk of Democratic votes. Not the performative small numbers, but a good number. So, Bill Pulte, where are the surrogates for Bill Pulte on Capitol Hill? I've yet to find one. Somebody who is championing triumphantly the Bill Pulte position, the Bill Pulte acting nomination. And to a degree, there's going to have to be a resolution to it before FISA has any long-term extension. There's no way around it, which raises the stakes over the next 72 hours for what happens, and probably is underwriting a lot of what the Republican leadership is talking to the White House about at this moment in time. They don't view this as negotiable. They think FISA cannot go dark, even for a minute.
It also didn't seem to help the president's case for Pulte when he said that he wanted the next DNI to come in and fire a bunch of people, which again, House and Senate lawmakers on these House Intelligence Committees are like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
In my newsletter this morning, I said that's either crazy smart or crazy stupid. Because injecting this type of chaos onto the eve of a FISA deadline seems to be endangering the deadline, or it is using the deadline as a way to get through something that would not be stomachable in any other context. Bill Pulte in charge of 18 different intelligence agencies and lopping off staff left and right. They would never work in any other context. Maybe this is the one way to get that through.
Yeah. Mariana, we're also at that time of year, especially as we approach the 4th of July holiday, where the conventional wisdom was always like, this is kind of make or break season.
Yes.
Like the closer you get to the election, less and less likely things are going to happen. But it seems like we're at a point where Republicans might actually be able to advance some major policy here.
Yeah. So again, this week, reconciliation 2.0 is what everybody's been calling it up here. Remember, reconciliation 1.0 was the one big beautiful bill. So they might be able to say by the end of the week, hey, we finally did it. See, all you naysayers, I can envision it now, the leader saying, all you naysayers saying we wouldn't be able to do it. Well, The interesting thing is that really Johnson is the only leader, only Republican, who is really saying, well, we're going to get 3.0 done. What could 3.0 look like? Well, Republicans really want to pass the Save America Act, which has to do with voting ahead of the election. But truly, talk to any Republican who is vulnerable in a swing district, but also now rank and file Republicans, and they're saying, why is that a priority? First and foremost, barely have any margins in the House, now in the Senate. Can't rely on, just us passing these bills. Not everybody is on board with what could potentially be thrown in there. And why are you focusing on super partisan issues as you enter a general election? And everybody is talking about the economy, affordability. Shouldn't we be passing, even if they are messaging bills? If we want to do a 3.0, let's pack it with, again, affordability agenda items. That would be great, so we could go back home into August and campaign and say, we did that, keep us in power. Exactly. But I don't think that's going to happen, and there's rumors that August recess could come as early July, because if Republicans aren't able to get a number of their priorities done, they don't really have much else to vote for.
There's no good reason keeping lawmakers around with nothing to do.
No, festering, getting mad at leaders, no.
I do want to also note the NDAA is going to move this week, and we should have more on that later in the show. And I also want to talk about this week's show. On Thursday in particular, we're going to do a lot of deep dives on housing legislation. There is any number of bills moving through the House and Senate right now and looking at how to make housing more affordable, more accessible, and to build it faster. We're going to talk to Senator Jeff Merkley, Congresswoman Jamie Raskin, Delia Ramirez, and Kate Kamak, and also, so both members of the House and Senate with a housing-focused conversation on Thursday. And I think that's it for us this week. Or at least for today, I mean.
The week is young.
Don't
be jinxing stuff, but that'll do it. Don't be talking like that.
Tuesday, it already feels like ages. It does. Thank you all for watching on behalf of all of us. If it's important to the 535, it's important to us. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.